Hello, welcome to Recon 2020 and to Eurocon, and also welcome to my presentation about the fantastic beasts of Croatia. I'm Srebrenka Peregrin. I'm a storyteller, a published author, translator, and also an English teacher. And a big passion of mine are folk and fairy tales, especially from Croatia. So today I have prepared a talk about 25 different creatures which appear in our oral heritage and oral tradition, and which are also slowly making their way into our fantastic genre fiction. So to make this a little bit easier, I've divided the talk into 3 bits. So we'll be talking about legendary creatures first. These are all the creatures that change shape and may or may not have animal bits, or whose form we no longer have any idea about, because we have only kept the name or the idea and not really so much tradition. Then we'll talk about half human, half animal beings. And finally, about some of the most common animals which appear in our traditional stories. So, let's begin. We'll start with the legendary creatures. And one of the most curious ones that we really haven't got a clue about so much is the horned noon. Well, you would think it has something to do with the sun, but actually the description is much more of a devilish kind of a creature. So with these big horns, with lots of hair, and his main idea is to hunt down the people who go out in the high sun. Because, as you might know, Croatia, especially the coastal part, can have really, really hot summers. So going out at noon is not a good idea. Sometimes the horned noon can also be a woman, like an old lady, baba poludnica, and then she can also grab you and drag you into her nettly abode. Unfortunately, that's all we know about this creature, so straight on to the next one, and a completely different one, because this is about nighttime and moon. Moon was also not a very popular character, it appears. There's no further description or explanation what it looked like, so I would just suppose it was the moon as you see it in the sky. Although an interesting fact in Croatian, the moon is masculine, as is in many other Slavic folklore. It's a male entity. In Croatia, it is especially dangerous to young children, so infants or babies, and it used to be very important for the mother or father of a newborn to present it to the moon. Otherwise, the moon might get angry and start feeding on their child, like sucking out the life of him or her. And you would know this was happening because their ears would turn sallow and their skin would go all pale. So you needed then to do all the proper rituals and get on the moon's good side. There is also another creature from a general Slavic folklore, I'd say. So bies or bes is really a force to be reckoned with, not only in Croatia, but you get it in Serbia as well, and some and other countries in the Balkans, but I think also other Slavic countries. Now, this is a force which has, at least to our present knowledge, no form. So it is something invisible that attacks people and makes them do things they would never otherwise do. So, talk about finding an excuse for being angry at someone. So this is anger personified, or wrath, that really drives you to do crazy, stupid things. Another personification is Bowcut or Bowcut. Now, sometimes, especially in the modern days, he's talked about as fear personified, but actually it started out as a really cute little house elf or being, not very helpful though. So they looked a little bit like little hamsters with their fur, and they were very fluffy and would steal some clothes for themselves. Their main interest was in doing mischief around the house, or simply creating some noises for you to worry about. So this is actually a hamster just yawning. So that's about as much as frightening as they would get. Not that much, but a little bit perhaps uncomfortable. So you would never be too easy if you heard the different scratches and knockings around your house. Then something similar, also very difficult to see because they hide in the dark, are keçizube. Now, as the subtitle here suggests, you might translate it as green teeth, because you would just see the little grinning teeth in the darkness. And why? Because they also are prone to mischief, and they were kind of throw things. They hide behind the trees in the night and then throw things at you, or just kind of push different branches under your feet, so you trip and fall, and then they're very happy and they laugh at you and make fun of you, but are otherwise, as much as we know, harmless. Now, mraki or mračňáky are much more serious beings of the dark. Some even call them darkness personified. They usually appear as tall, thin, hooded figures. Sometimes people would see them at the very back of funeral processions, for example. But they were also dangerous to children, because they would wait around in the dark for them, and then they would either beat them or take them along with them, or in some less severe cases, they would just give the children diarrhea. So in any case, it was a really smart idea not to go and mess about with mraki or mračňáky. Another personification of darkness is called Lorco, Orco, and it also has some other names such as Maninorco or Poprdan. And this last name comes from the fact that it hides in the dark, usually taking the form of a donkey. And if anybody would try to catch the donkey or ride it, it would fart, or just spray the person with stench, like yuck. And sometimes it would also grow to huge proportions, changing shape and taking people far, far away into the darkness and leaving them at an unknown place. So, from mildly infuriating, they could really go on to being quite dangerous. Some believe this is a remnant of the ancient beliefs in Orco, the lord of the underground. And then it just changed and changed in shape and in tellings until we had what is in fact a farting donkey. Then we have Matic. Now, although this photo that you can see is a cat with wings, it's not always a cat, and it doesn't always have wings. Sometimes it can also be a little child with a hat, but it can definitely change shape around a lot. Matic or Macic appears mainly in the coastal parts of Croatia, and can be, despite its appearance and the fact that it's born of a black cockerel, quite helpful to fishermen. So, well, obviously, if you don't make it angry and if you leave out some fish for it. So this is, although it kind of looks a little bit scary, it's actually quite a good little demon creature of our folklore. If, however, it turned to be ugly and nasty, the only way to get rid of a Matic was to drown it in a pot of boiling oil. Not very easy, but could be done if it was not one of these benevolent beings. Okay, and on to the dragon, because how can we talk about fantastic creatures and not mention the dragon? In Croatia, you have different names for dragons. There is obviously Zmaj, which is the most popular one these days, but in the past it was known as Ajdaja, Šarkanj, or Pozoj, so depending on the part of Croatia you were from. But most often, if it did not have only a single head, which sometimes it does, in Croatia as well as in some other Slavic cultures, the dragon would come with 3, 6, 9, or 12 heads. And they all needed obviously to be dealt with one at a time. There is some folklore in Croatia which says that a dragon will only get its wings once it is 9 years old, and also its feet, so it can't fly or move around that much before it turns 9. And then it has to fly into a body of water to survive. So our dragons are mostly watery creatures, and the biggest problems that people have around here with the dragons is that they bring on storms and thunderstorms and floods, especially in the northern parts of Croatia. And the interesting thing about it is that although it can be and occasionally is killed by knights or by these curious humans very well versed in magic, they can also in Croatia be killed, and often are either killed or hurt by women. Because in our tradition, dragons can be killed with valerian. So women who knew that would go into the forest or places where valerian grew, and then would bring back valerian or odoljen and kill the dragon. And there is also an interesting story about a dragon's mother who was so furious her son had taken some princesses for his prisoners that she imprisoned him to teach him a lesson in a barrel. And then it's a very long story. You'll need to hear that one another time. Moving on to half human, half animal creatures, we have one of, I think, the most common adversary in any tale, which is the devil. So in Croatia, the devil will be there instead of a whole host of other fantastic creatures, especially malevolent ones. And he has a number of names in Croatia, including Zlodej, or the one who does evil, or Paklenjak, the one who comes from hell. Now, the woman in the photo is not there incidentally. Women are also not only in Croatia, not only well versed in dealing with dragons, but also with devils. So there is always a story about a woman who has managed to trick the devil, either by torturing him to death, by constant nagging, or by tricking him into going into a bottle, or simply by making the cockerels crow before their time. So quite a lot of stories there about how to deal with devils. And I must say most devils in Croatian stories and Croatian folklore are losers. So they really very rarely get what they want. Occasionally they will help, even, but even then somebody will come along and beat them. A very similar figure is Krampus, which you may know from a recent film, and in Croatian folklore, he's the person who comes along with Saint Nicholas, while Saint Nicholas brings gifts, mostly sweets, but nowadays they get more and more expensive for the good kids. Krampus goes around with some sort of a cane, or plain coal, and punishes the children who were naughty. So this was way before Father Christmas and his naughty or nice list. Now, another being which is half human, half animal in Croatia is a fairy. While in other traditions, they can be these little creatures that flutter around, especially since the Victorian times. In Croatia, fairies have kept their traditional look, which means that they have the feet or even entire legs of either cows or mares or goats. And they're very helpful with all of these creatures as well. So they help people guard them. They hide their legs under long white dresses, and they have beautiful golden hair. And now, unfortunately, the internet isn't very well acquainted with Croatian fairies, so this was the closest photo I could find of anything that resembles a fairy from Croatia. And just like in other places, fairies can be both good or bad, and a lot of the times it depends on the person, but sometimes it just depends on their whims, so you have to learn all the tricks of how to get rid of them, if you can, of course. It's not always that easy to get rid of a Croatian fairy. Unless you try to marry her, then usually that does the trick. There's another similar creature, Pustolovita, called. I translated it very roughly as hunt alone, but it could also be like an adventure hunter, and not quite sure because we don't have many stories that survive of Pustolovita, whether she likes to hunt people who are alone or likes to hunt adventurers, or is it that she simply loves to find adventures and loves to hunt all alone, because she does live alone, usually on the banks of rivers. Her body is very hairy, and she beckons to the sailors from the shore. So they, when they arrive, she grabs them and drags them along into the forests, and there are no explanations as to what she does to them, so you can use your imagination there. Another creature, kind of similar because he also dwells in the waters and lakes, is vodyanoy. And now this is a waterman, or sometimes because of the Russian, where he also exists in stories, he's called the vodyanoy, or and he's this, again, half human, half animal creature, even more animal than human, I guess, because although his face, as you can see, resembles a human, his entire body is covered in scales and mud and algae, and then he's got the skins or the webs between his fingers. He also has a fish tail, so he's a kind of a old and not very pretty merman here in Croatia, but he doesn't live in the sea. He mostly lives as I said, in rivers or streams. Sometimes he will help people, but then at other times he will just make them drown. So you really have to be very careful about Vodeniak and try to avoid him and the places which he inhabits very, very carefully. Now, there is a creature which also likes to live alone or sometimes with a mother that takes care of his house, and this is the doghead. In Croatia, he's known as basoglove, and in English also as the cynocephalus. He is kind of half human, half dog, usually has only a single eye on his forehead, and is very famous for eating people, both little children who go into the woods or just travelers caught at unawares. Luckily, they don't appear to be very smart, so all the stories that I've ever read about dogheads actually end happily, and people do manage to get away from them or make a certain bargain or trick them. So he isn't as dangerous as he might appear at first. Now there is the werewolf, whose photo I really couldn't find because a werewolf in Croatian is a type of a zombie. He's called Vukodlak, Kudlak, Kozlak, and countless other names as well. He's very well recorded to appear throughout Croatia. So some even say that some of the first vampire zombies were from Croatia, from a little town in Istria. So what we call Vukodlak or werewolf is actually the skin of dead man who was very sinful. So the devil went into his grave, peeled off the skin, and poured some blood and his soul inside, and made him come alive again 40 days after the funeral. Vukodlaks, werewolves, are very, very ugly beings, not only physically, but very often they will attack people. They will try to take things from them, or they will try to drag them with them into the grave. And luckily, they can be also killed, but not very easily. So you would need to find the grave of the werewolf or zombie, have a priest nearby, and have a hawthorn stake to drive either through his heart or also his neck. In Croatia, necks are also a part where they are very vulnerable. Or again, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It appears that we give equal rights here. So you have stories about werewolf princesses that eat up entire armies, as well as men who come to seek their wives or fiancés. And they are all more or less similarly dealt with. And then we have the wolfskins, which are actually more like werewolves, but they are called wolfskins. Also sometimes God's wolves, because there are stories of them descending from heavens to the earth. Mostly they appear as wolves, but sometimes they can take the skin off, and underneath they are human. As far as I'm aware, they are most often female. So when they take the skin off, they are a woman. But sometimes the woman will also make her son, or the son will make his brother into wolfskin, and then they will have to roam the countryside dressed like wolves and behaving like wolves, so stealing cattle or chickens from people and never knowing when they will or will not be killed. There are ways to turn wolfskins back into people by jumping through hoops or recognizing them. Also by eating food which was sanctified in church. So lots of ways to deal with being a wolfskin. And an interesting thing is that some of the wolfskins will also become wolf herds. So they will have a whole pack of wolves and wolfskins together, and they will tell them where to hunt, what to bring them, which or whose animals they can or cannot kill, and so on. And with this, we move on to fantastic animals, or different animals that not only appear in folk and fairy tales, but have some additional interesting traits. Such as, for example, Balina fish. This is another name actually for asp fish in Croatia, but actually it's more a sort of a leviathan, I guess, in the Croatian tradition, because it is so huge that it can drive or pull entire ships along with them, and very often to hell. Sometimes, however, smaller types of balina fishes are kept in pools, near a house, for example, but then it is very, very dangerous for any person to go near because they can be swallowed whole or even poisoned. Talking of poison, we have obviously snakes, many different types of snakes. Now, in Croatia, there aren't many poisonous snakes, only about 3 kinds. However, the folk and fairy tale type, known as kacha, is special because they do not bite, but spit the poison out. So people believe that you can also be spat and poisoned by the snake. Now, this is obviously the malevolent kind of a snake, but there are also good snakes in our stories, actually quite a lot of them. They either turn into fairies, into sisters, or grooms, and then marry the women they have been helping, or vice versa. And also there is a predominant belief, especially in the northern parts of Croatia, for example, Međimurje, that snakes guard houses or homes, and it is considered very, very lucky if you have or if you find a snake under your house. It means that it has come there to protect you and your family, and it is absolutely, you're absolutely forbidden from killing it. Then there is this type of a bird. Well, not this type of a bird, obviously, because I really try as hard as I might, could not find a better photo, but a bird with 12 heads and 12 wings. It lives deep in the forests and is quite dangerous. So it can poison people, it can kill you with its beaks or wings even. And the only way to get rid of it is to chop off one head at a time and one wing at a time, and not many succeed. So quite a lot of stories, at least one brother gets killed, sometimes 2, before the final one manages to do away with this strange sort of a beast. And then there is the dove. You would say there's nothing weird or strange about doves, right? Except that in Croatia, they are used by witches who turn pretty girls into doves. And sometimes I have read one account here from Zagreb, which is the capital of Croatia, about a person who wanted to die so badly that he went to the priest and asked him to end this miserable life of his, and then he was turned into a dove and sent into heaven. So I guess doves in Croatian stories play some really strange roles. so far I've never ever heard of Catholic euthanasia, but there you have it. And then obviously there are many horses in stories. They appear alongside fairies quite a lot, but I just wanted to talk about this one special horse called Vidovina, who lives on a glass mountain with a hag whose name is Rumpampum, and her daughter, who is a beautiful fairy who falls in love with the mortal man, and then Vidovina, the horse, helps them escape. Now, this is probably a motif which has come from the neighboring Slovenia, where they have a malevolent spirit, also called Vidovina. However, here in Croatia, it turned into a very kind and smart horse, which always chooses its own owner, so to whom he belongs or where he lives, and nobody can keep him for very long if he doesn't want to. Then the golden horned ram. This is a special type of a ram which also appears in many stories. Sometimes they will be properties of fairies, and then our heroes will go and search for them. At other times, they would be simply born from ordinary sheep who graze in fairy woods. Occasionally, they are a reward for a hero for something that they did well. And then there is also a curious type of a story of the Beauty and the Beast type, in which a man was cursed and turned into a golden horned ram along with his 12 brothers or good friends, and it took a very brave woman to free them all from the curse. Cows are also abundant in Croatian tales, and I picked this photo specifically because of the ropes on the cow's horns, because in many stories, cows are usually the animals into which a protagonist's mother is turned, especially the Croatian type Cinderella gets her mother turned into a cow, and this is why her father has to find a stepmother. And all these cows are very good at spinning, so they always help the girl to spin wool or flax and return with all her chores done. They don't usually have a very happy ending, unfortunately, but do not appear to be very concerned about that. So they're, just like in everyday life, they're very calm and peaceful and give good advice. Well, maybe not in ordinary life, but in stories, definitely. And finally, there is Vixen, the Empress, or the smart fox. In Croatia, she's always a girl or a female. And she's so clever that she beats the wolf and the bear and even the lion. And this is why she's crowned the Empress. If she comes in contact with people, she will always help them. She will find, for example, or gather armies for them, or she will go and do various chores and help the hero find his reward. And sometimes, she will either do this herself or she will find someone to help. So the Vixen always comes out as the best animal in any story where you can see her. So very rarely does she have any problems, and then only if she's too greedy. But most of the time, she is simply the cleverest animal you can find, and rarely enchanted. So you won't find that so many enchanted foxes. They seem to be masters of their own fate. And with this, I will thank you for staying with me during this presentation, and thank you for your time. And I hope to see you at some other convention, maybe face to face, so we can talk and discuss all the fantastic creatures there are in all the different folklores and stories throughout the world. Thank you very much, and bye bye.